Today I have a very special video for you guys. This is probably something that many of you have not seen before, but I was very lucky and blessed to be able to tour a Mennonite farm here in East Tennessee. They are using no-till, regenerative, different permaculture techniques, but they didn't start out like that. They started out conventional. So today I'm going to show you around their farm, show you a lot of the different techniques that they're using, and the story that got them on this path, which is very different than a lot of the other Mennonite farms in the area, even if they're using organic techniques. So because this is a Mennonite farm, they do not want to be filmed, or they didn't want any audio of them. So the Mennonites are a Christian, Bible-believing community. They've existed for hundreds of years now, and they are people that live a very simple life. They don't want to interact with modern technology for the most part, because they want to try to keep themselves separated from the world and some of the influences that I'm sure a lot of us nowadays, as the culture has changed so much in, let's just say, the West, that I think a lot of us are kind of realizing, and I've noticed this huge push back towards homesteading, living off the land, traditional family values. Well, the Mennonites have been doing that for a very, very long time. And they're people that, can teach us probably the most out of any community in America about homesteading, growing your own food, raising healthy, vibrant families. So that's why I hope that someday I'd be able to tour a farm like this, but because of the fact that they don't want to be on camera, I thought maybe it will never happen. But we were able to make the connection here, and so we toured around with the farmer. He showed me everything that they had going on. There's got a lot of really interesting techniques that they're using that I have never seen before. I'm sure you haven't seen before either. So I want to tell you though about the story of how this even occurred, because when they first came here, they were not using a lot of these techniques. And it all started with their dad, who grew up in Missouri, and he was a farmer there using horse and plow. They used pesticides. They did all the conventional techniques, growing a lot of food, but of course, not a lot of nutrition and, poisons. So what ended up happening is they moved to Tennessee about 13 years ago, and they started having some health problems in their family. And their dad looked more into it and discovered, hey, maybe it's some of these chemicals that we're using. Maybe it's the food that we're eating. And this is how I kind of woke up to these type of techniques, and how to create healthy bodies is through growing healthy food. I think most of us probably, that's why we got into growing our own food, is for the health reasons. So the same thing happened with his dad. So they switched over, they went organic. And as sure a lot of you guys know, organic, it's good. They're using, hardly any chemicals or better chemicals, but that is not the full thing, because if we don't have the right nutrition in our soil, we don't have the right microbial life, that's not getting transmitted to the plants. They're not getting all the right nutrients so that they can resist pest and disease to the ultimate possible way. So about 6 to 7 years ago, one of their sons read a book, Regenerative Farms and Gardens. And that book taught him about some of these biological relationships between the plants and the roots, and how to grow more nutrient-dense food. So that sent them on the journey, and they started talking about it in their community, and everyone told them, hey, you're stupid. That's not ever going to work. Doing permanent beds and no-till, you have to plow. You have to use chemical fertilizers. If you're going to grow big, beautiful crops. Very similar story to when you talk to conventional, regular farmers, which they call English. We are English people who live out in the regular world. And the Mennonites and the Amish, they speak a form of Dutch, essentially, is like their first language. Of course, they speak English as well. And there's Mennonites, I learned, there's Mennonites in Russia and all over different European countries. There's different types of Mennonites. We won't go into the different kinds. I'm still kind of learning about all the different differences, but these are old order Mennonites, so they don't use any electricity other than like maybe some pedal powered things. They use, we'll get into their water systems, how they're gravity feeding all this water using a water wheel. It's pretty fascinating. But back to the story. So once the son realized this and said, hey dad, can we try out some of these techniques? Can we try doing no-till, like actually not plowing? So their dad gave them this little section over here that was like a bad part of their farm and said, you know what, go for it. Why don't you try it over here? Their dad didn't think it was gonna work, of course, because, you know, he's just had, you know, been doing conventional farming probably for 20 years or something at that point. So, you know, when you're doing something and it's working, it's hard to imagine another way to do things. But, you know, the dad already had switched to organic. He had already kind of figured out many things. So he said, you know, I'm gonna give my sons this chance. And the first year they tried it out, they got similar yields, didn't really see too much difference. But in that second year and every year after, they got better yields, healthier crops, less pests. And they even told me a story. There's their neighbor's farmers right here, right behind me, and they're also Mennonites. He's completely conventional and plows, and they had potatoes side by side on both of these fields. The potatoes that were grown here, no-till regenerative, no potato bugs. The other field, completely eaten up by those bugs. Seeing things like that is what really convinced them to convert, eventually, their whole farm. So as they continued on to convert these fields, they just kept learning more and more things. They subscribed to Acres USA, which is a fantastic organic and regenerative farming publication. Read more books by, you know, like Elliot Coleman, and he knows who Elaine Ingham is. I was even surprised to know they know about Jadam and Korean natural farming and some of these really out there cutting edge techniques, and they're starting to play with them all. One of his brothers is doing once a day moves with all the cattle, 100% grass fed. So, you know, the highest level quality of food. And we're gonna get to see all that in a little bit as I show you guys around the farm. So now their entire farm is now 100% no-till. And they kind of told me a funny story, like their plow, they joke now that it basically, they just want to turn their plow into a bunch of mailboxes. So it's just a decoration now. And he said in the spring, when all the rest of the farmers are plowing their fields and doing the normal conventional thing, they're out here either putting down tarps or mulch in preparation for planting all of their no-till fields. So now they told me that their costs are way down and their profit margins are way higher because they're not using as much labor. Horses, they told me, are very expensive. And you can kind of think about a horse kind of like a tractor, where, you know, it's expensive to run the gas and do the maintenance, to have all the implements. It's the same thing for them with a horse. So now that they're not using horses that often, and actually the main time they're using a horse now is they have every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe every 10 no-till beds or so, they have a giant walkway so they can bring their horse in here with a big cart, pick up the produce and take it somewhere. And he even told me he has a pressurized spraying system where he connected it with like a mower and a hot water heater pressure tank, so that when the horse and buggy goes forward, the tank pressurizes and then they can spray out compost teas and different nutrient solutions onto their plants. So they're very inventive and creative with how they solve different problems. And I think it's just so cool that it doesn't matter whether you're using technology or no technology or wherever you are in the world, all of these techniques are possible and there's a way to do it. So, and they're living proof of that. You know, I think a lot of us think about, you know, we got to run our animals with electric. Well, they're doing once a day moves without electric, and I'll show you guys that. You know, how am I going to run irrigation without water, without pressurized water? Well, they figured out a way to pressurize it. And I think it's just such a huge similarity between the Amish and Mennonite type communities versus our farming communities. I would have thought they would have been, you know, there's a lot of differences, but it's a lot of the same stories of, you know, you're trying to, you know, the son is trying to talk to the dad about, hey, like, we got to change our techniques. This isn't working. Like, I read about a better way. Or for us, I saw a YouTube video that shows a better way of doing this. And just the resistance to change and doing things in a healthier way. But the beauty of regenerative, that it's not only healthier for the soil, the animals, the humans, but you also make more money as a farmer You're able to sell produce to your customers that's actually healing their body versus poisoning it. And it's just really cool to see that in a community that's more cut off from what we experience out in our world, the same things are happening. We're all humans. We're all trying to figure out the best way to grow food. And as we've discovered over the last few decades, getting back to nature, doing it God's way. That's why my channel is called Nature's Always Right, because we're trying to mimic nature and utilize techniques that work with the animals, that work with the soil and the plants in the best way possible. And that's how we're gonna grow the best food. And so yeah, it was just really inspiring for me to be here today with them and to be able to share all of this with you guys. So let's get into some of these techniques that they're using. You're gonna recognize some of them, and some of them are completely different. So let's get into it. So we're gonna start out right here on their polyculture beds. And these are just a mixed area where they grow herbs and a few different veggies. I thought this was kind of cool to show you. So here they've got some lemon balm, it looks like. Some different types of flowers. They've got celery here, oregano, some roses. Now this was really fascinating. This is papyrus. I'd never seen this before. So papyrus, you might know, is the original paper that like the Egyptian used and stuff. And what they would do is they would cut this outer skin off, and on the inside is sort of this spongy layer, and they essentially just twist it all together, smash it with a hammer, and then that becomes the paper. So it's kind of cool. They were just growing this for fun. And I guess one of the sons made a little postcard out of it and was saying, hey, you could totally sell this or turn it into something. This is a really cool crop to know about. And these are called Egyptian walking onions. And these are a perennial onion. So these are something that you could plant once and let it just keep growing and growing. And what they'll do is they'll kind of lean down and fall over like this, and they will produce more roots in another plant and send up another one. So they just keep spreading out like a grass over time. So that's a great onion to plant if you have any more permaculture type beds or perennial type beds. One of the daughters was harvesting all this basil this morning. I don't know if that was for market or for themselves, but looks like we got some marigolds here, rhubarb. So lots of different perennials. This is lavender. So really nice perennial herb and flower garden. So let's head on to check out all of their production stuff. So this is one of the first things that stood out to me on this lettuce bed is check out this really cool paper mulch that they're using. And he found this by talking to some paper salesman, that some person in South Carolina, they were able to buy 5 miles of paper on a roll of this stuff. And so what they do is just lay it out just like a plastic mulch, cut a hole and plant their lettuce. So this paper here that they're buying, it's about 50 cents per pound, if you're wondering. If you're interested in looking for something like this, I just recommend contacting some different paper companies that make all different types of paper. It's probably slightly thicker than a piece of computer paper. And he told me that it works great for quicker crops. So like your lettuces, it won't work as good for tomatoes or peppers or the kale, things that you're leaving in a lot longer, because it's just gonna break down and degrade. Water will go through it pretty decently, a lot better than the non-woven plastic. So it's also very good at that. And I think that using this in combination with either some wood chip mulch or some straw mulch would, that combination works really well at snuffing out weeds for a very long time. So definitely look around and see if you can find it. There's going to be no glue on this, no ink on this, so that's kind of an advantage from just saving your boxes that you're getting from the store or the garage door companies or wherever you're finding your local cardboard. And you'll notice the irrigation looks just like how we do it. It's all the same. So the water system, the way it works, there is a creek, I think 1,000 feet away or something, up a hill, and they have a pipe. That pipe runs and hits a water wheel. The water wheel adds pressure to the system, and then that pressure goes and into these tanks. And so they, I'm probably not explaining it very well, but the tanks essentially gravity feed, there's like a 12, 15-foot drop out to the farm, and he said it creates about 5 gallons per minute. So they are able to run the drip when they need it, completely with no electricity. So it's pretty sweet. And the different Mennonite communities around here, they have different setups for their water wheels where they're running other types of machinery too. There's a printing press that runs, and I can't remember exactly how that runs, but I think it is like a water wheel type system as well, that then runs these pulleys and runs these gears that then allow the printing press to work. So it's really amazing kind of the different solutions that they've come up with to remain off electricity, but still be able to do certain things like publish little newsletters and things like this that go out to their community and other people as well. So next we've just got a row of bush beans here, a row of peppers, and then it looks like cantaloupes or honeydews right here. Another row of peppers, zucchini, some type of squash, and then corn. And this was a really cool technique. He was telling me that they like to grow ground growing plants in between rows of more taller growing plants. And that just helps to provide some more protection and using up the vertical space really well. And they'll even grow plants like over here, I'll show you, the tomatoes have lettuce growing right underneath the side. So similar technique to what a lot of market gardeners do, trying to grow more food in a smaller area. And so they're using tons of different mulch. You know, there's certain plants, like their long growing plants, they will use some plastic just to keep the weeding down. But for the most part, they're using a ton of hay mulch on their farm. So this paper, a lot of times they'll put down paper and then the hay mulch on top of that. I was asking them, well, don't you get a lot of seeds with all the hay? And he said, yeah, you know, we might get a little bit of oats or something's popping up, but there's also a sagebrush based hay. And that hay, he told me, because their soil has now changed so much, it's higher in calcium and it's healthier, that the sagebrush weeds don't even germinate because they just can't grow there. And if you didn't know, that's one way to control weeds, is actually changing the biology and the nutrient structure of your soil. And because the weeds that we call weeds, these are all plants that have a purpose, and they're actually growing in the ground in order to set up shop and change the soil structure for the next succession of plants that can grow there, so that over time the soil improves just based upon what plants are growing there. So that's one example of a way that you can think about growing plants over time. Your soil is going to change in such a way that weeds will actually start disappearing, bugs will start disappearing, and this is the advantage of growing using regenerative techniques. So these right here are part of their pest management system. These birds are called purple martins, and you'll see these gourd little birdhouses kind of everywhere in Tennessee. It's a really popular thing to hang in your yard. A lot of people like the sound of their chirping, and but they're just amazing at picking bugs off a plant. So they've got them all on these big wheels here, and if you get too close, like if you're picking berries or things like this, the martins will come down and dive bomb you to tell you to get out of here and leave them alone so that you don't eat all their berries. I'm sure you can buy these things, or you can make them yourself and grow your own gourd. But I'd highly recommend birds or bird houses on your property, because they will really help to just lower the pest pressure. So right here is another really impressive no-till crop that they're growing. This is actually rice, and the variety is called Upland. So they'll start all of their rice in trays. One seed will produce about 10 stalks from the rice plant. So that cluster you're seeing, that's all from one seed. And they like to start it in the trays early in the season because I guess they have an issue with birds. So I think later in the season, there's a species of birds that will come in and eat the rice. So they get it started as early as they can in the season to ensure that they get a harvest. He's telling me that about 8 of these plants, you know, this little section here, is about 1 pound of rice once they harvest it. And these may be 300-foot rows, something like this, but this produces way more than enough rice for their whole family to eat. They have a family of 11, including all the kids. So, you know, it's quite a lot of mouths to feed, and they have rice left over even. So you can do no-till rice. You don't have to flood the field like Masanobu Fukuoka discovered. So they're doing it just like that with the hay mulch is working really good for them as well. And they harvest it all by hand. They hull it with a machine that is also water powered, I believe, down at another Amish community, loaded up into the huller, and that takes all the husk off so that then they have the white rice at the end. So they do use that machine there to do it. He said you could, if you had to in a survival situation by hand, you could use a mortar and pestle to unlock the husk off of there. But if you want to do at scale, you need a machine to take off all the husks. But it was really neat to see how they're doing this all no-till and having great success with it here in Tennessee. We've got cucumbers growing here, and they'll either grow them on the ground or they'll set up another trellis with their T-posts or their conduit and string. And then they have another brassica family in the cardboard mulch there. It looks like it's kohlrabi, or it could be a cabbage as well. Doing a later summer season crop. And then they've got their kale. Some really nice kale plants here. They look extremely healthy. And I don't even see aphids on these. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing any aphids on this. So look at that, guys. No-till regenerative really works. Where are the bugs? I don't see any. Isn't that cool? They got some dino kale and they got the curly. Check these peppers out. These are looking awesome. They look so healthy, and they smell. I can even smell. They smell great. I don't see any bugs. Just look how colorful the green leaves are. No discoloration, which shows that there's no nutrient deficiencies. Just all of their food just looks really, really healthy. So for the nutrition for their farm, they're trying to use as much compost as possible. Trying to get away from using like fish emulsion, which is what they're using now for a quick fertilizer, which is a great organic fertilizer to use for your crops. But they just find that the compost, it has biology, it has organic matter, it has all the nutrients in it, you know, and that's why a lot of us really like to use compost as that base fertilizer, inoculant. It's an everything all in one. So they are, you know, trying to experiment, you know, with other things like Jadam, which I was really excited to hear that they knew about that. And I think they heard about it through some other people, maybe like customers that came and said, hey, have you heard about these techniques? And because a lot of people, you know, word has gotten out about them that they are using a lot of these interesting techniques that are working really well for them. And they've had many other Mennonites that are trying to start to use these techniques. Customers, you know, they're just trying to spread the word like a lot of us are who have tried these techniques, and getting more and more people to try them out. So it's really cool to see the influence that they're having on the local area, getting more people to just get into this and see that, yeah, it really does work. Your crops are going to be better. You're going to have less labor. So it's just really amazing. They do lots of direct seeding. They use an earthway seeder just like me. And they got beets here. This is not using this bed. Celery. Check out how gigantic this cabbage is. There's an even bigger one I can show you, but I mean, these are huge. I mean, probably the biggest cabbage I've ever seen. Absolutely gigantic. Make some really good sauerkraut out of that. Let's go over and check out their hothouse here. So they use the greenhouses to get a early start on spring growing. So in here they did their first round of pole beans here. So what they've done is after they got all the harvest, they've pulled up the plants, and the remaining beans, these are open pollinated, so they'll be able to save the seed on these. And they just let them die here, let the seed develop, they harvest it, and then they have seed for next season. You know, we didn't talk about this, but I think this is how they're heating this greenhouse in the winter. or it's used for their irrigation. I'm not exactly sure, but maybe they're running hot water through this or something, and it radiates to provide heat. So they're long growing crops. You'll notice that they're using a plastic just to keep the weeds down, and they got mulch underneath this. But yeah, these tomatoes are looking super healthy and good, and they've got a light shade cloth on top as well. So the tomatoes that they're growing, they're called Big Beef. So it looks like just a nice slicing tomato. So once these tomatoes are all finished up, they will plant a cover crop in here for soil fertility. And he does just a diversified crop, you know, legumes, a couple grasses, some brassicas, so, you know, a real nice mix. And they will let that grow from July to October. They found it to be really good because it's kind of too hot in here to be able to grow anything, except the cover crop grows really well. And then the winter frost will just kill it all. It lays down, and now they have this really nice mulch they can plant into and feed the soil over winter. And I think they'll plant it, you know, right at the end of winter, early spring. This gets planted out, and then the cycle starts again. Or they're able to plant maybe some winter greens or radishes or things like that might be able to survive in the greenhouse. Here's a good example of their neighbor's farm, all corn, all plowed. Now, it's very easy to get the planting done in spring by doing this, but destroying the soil microbes, the fungal connections. He's pulling up more weed seeds from the seed bank here, and ultimately the food won't be as nutrient dense in the end. So corn's looking good though. So here's another bed where they're tarping. They had a previous, I think, you know, coming out of winter crop here, like kale or something like that. And yep, they use tarps just like us. And, you know, we were kind of talking about that. You know, a lot of people have problems with using plastic, but at scale, you only have a few choices. You could use herbicide, so now you're poisoning the soil, poisoning the humans. You could use plastic, which the only possible effect would be microplastics. And, you know, there have been studies that shown that microplastics can end up in plants. So, I mean, it is possible. So minimally using that, or you can use 100% human labor, which would make farming completely unprofitable. And that means the farmer goes out of business, which means there is no food for anyone. Or you could use mechanical tillage. That uses machines. Now, they wouldn't be doing that, obviously. They would maybe use horses, or you're plowing. Now you're destroying soil structure, and you're having less nutrients, and more pests and disease now is happening. So now you need to possibly use herbicides and pesticides in order to get a final crop at the end. And, you know, the farmer is juggling all of these different variables to be able to produce food for us. So you got to keep that all in mind when you're kind of talking bad about somebody or how they're farming. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot more complex than a lot of people want to make it. So, you know, I think that plastic, while it's not ideal, it can have its place. But of course, you know, the farmers here that I talk to and other farmers around the world, you know, we're trying to move away from plastic, but sometimes it becomes unavoidable, or a crop will get out of hand, or weeds get out of hand, and then, you know, you're kind of left with no choice sometimes, especially the climate. The climate's going to play into that majorly, because in San Diego, I could get away with just doing wood chip mulch, and, you know, because there's no rain. But here in Tennessee, where it turns into a rainforest in the summer, essentially, it's hard to get away with it. So just keep in mind, there's so much context involved with the techniques that you're using in farming. Some of them are universal, but just, you know, we got to be wise with what we're doing. And if you're farming for a living, if you don't make a profit, you're done. You go out of business. Now there's no food for anybody. So let me show you an example, though, right here, of a place where they started this completely no-till. The example is right over here. It started just like this, and they can cut it down with a horse-drawn bush hog, or they can scythe it. So cut it down to nothing, snuff out the grass with a tarp. Then they add on their compost on top of that, cardboard paper and mulch, and then plant their plants into that. So, you know, that's what, you know, most of us will do if we want to start completely no-till beds. And as you can see, this thing's basically weed free. Sometimes they'll actually plow their beds to create them first and then never till again. And doesn't that sound familiar? Lots of us will do that too, where we'll rototill just once, set everything up, and then it's no-till from there on out. So they've experimented with both techniques, and he said, you know, when he can, he'd rather just go completely no-till and never have to use the plow at all. There's just so many similarities like that I wouldn't have expected. And you know, maybe that's because he's also studying many of the techniques that we learned from past regenerative farmers or current regenerative farmers. So it's just really cool to see how they're adapting it to the small amount of technology that they do use. And speaking of more cool techniques, check out these pole beans here. I just want to show you their trellis and how they are tying them up, because that's what's so unique here. So this is a completely filled out, this is a bed that they're harvesting. So they have a post about every 10 foot or so. They're using a plastic twine. And let's go over to a fresh bed and I'll show you how they're wiring these up, because he told me he could do a whole line in about 30 minutes. He can have all the twine set up. So here's how this starts out. They have a huge thing of twine in their pocket. They'll tie an initial knot up here. They'll go down with it, swing it back up. And this bottom part, this is not tied to anything. It's just a little loop. And then they come back up. It does another little loop, go back down, come back up, and tie it. So every other one, they're tying it. So they're never cutting any string. It's all one continuous string all the way down this entire line, which makes it really fast to set this up. And then here's the plant here. So the plant just naturally is able to find that string and go straight up it, and they're direct seeding these. So I thought that's a really cool technique that maybe some of you guys could try to emulate, because that's really fast in order to set these up. And I like the, you know, they're using all metal poles here. All of their seeds, they do not use treated seeds. You know, he's of the same belief as me. You don't want to just kill off any beneficial bacteria. And, you know, from the beginning stage from seed until they develop their first roots, they are in relationship with different microbes, fungi, bacteria. So we want to be sure that they can establish that from day one. So having fungicide on our seeds when we start is probably not a good idea. But if you have healthy microbes growing in your soil, then that, just like having probiotics in your stomach, that is going to protect against any of these bad fungi that could possibly be in the soil. Or they won't even be in the soil because they've already been eradicated by the good guys. So right behind me here in the straw are peanuts. And he was telling me how he really is trying to produce aflatoxin resistant peanuts. And if you don't know about aflatoxin, it is a mold that grows on peanuts that has been shown to cause cancer. So it is not good to eat it. You know, a lot of the peanuts at the store, or the peanut butter, a lot of that does have mold toxins on it, kind of like coffee does. In America, there's no laws about mold on coffee. Most of the countries around the world do have those laws, so that, you know, they're not eating that. So some of these molds, they cause people a lot of different immune problems and inflammation and things like this. So he was saying that you could use a UV light, apparently, and if you look at the aflatoxin, will actually glow under this light. So as he produces better and better seed crop of his peanuts, he wants to be able to ensure that they are really resistant to having aflatoxin on them. But a lot of that aflatoxin on these crops is coming from bad storage processes and things like this. So peanuts are a great one to grow yourself. They're not that hard, and you're just ensuring yourself a way better quality food at the end with less toxins. So right behind me is a no-till bed of potatoes, and this is one of the crops that they said they have had the most success with moving to no-till. You know, I told that story earlier of the neighbor farmer who had issues with a bunch of these bugs going after his potatoes, but they have had no issues. So no-till potatoes are huge. You know, I guess being root crops, you know, there's this even bigger relationship, I'm sure, with the health of the eventual food that you're going to eat, because it's in the ground the entire time. So no-till potatoes are definitely the way to go. You know, when you dig them up, of course, you know, the ground's going to get a little bit disturbed, but not plowing the ground just makes such a big difference. And feeding all of this carbon layer here with all of that hay mulch is just going to make an incredible difference. And he told me that two of the big stress points for potatoes to watch out for is that either they're too hot or they're too dry. And mulch helps out with both of those things, because now that the soil is covered, that's going to help protect the soil from the sun. And when it rains or you're watering, it's going to retain a lot more of that moisture so that the potatoes don't dry out. And he said once they get too hot or too dry, that happens to them. They have that stress. Now they get weakened and the bugs are able to come in, and because the defense systems are down on the potatoes, and then it can cause problems for your crop. So those are two major things to watch out for when you're growing potatoes. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video as much as I am. This is my brand new channel, Stephen Cornett. So I'm going to be doing all of my tour videos here as among other different traveling videos that I'll be doing about farming, homesteading, growing your own food, different businesses around food, and anything else that I might find interesting while I'm on my travels. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell and help me grow this channel up a bit. Thank you if you're a subscriber over at Nature's Always Right for supporting me on my journey and trying to bring you guys the highest quality information about all of these different topics. And hope you enjoy the rest of this video. So now I'm walking over towards where some of their animal stuff is, and their trees and orchard, and they have a little pond stocked with some fish in it that they're trying to get even more fish into. And we were talking about different techniques of feeding fish, different supplements like duckweed or black soldier fly larvae. And here's a place where this is where they one of the brothers keeps their pigs in the winter. They throw them in here, and then they move off to another area for summer. And I was telling him more about the Korean natural farming no-smell pig pen setup, and that this might be a good place to try that out if they're interested for winter. I think that'd be an excellent system. And that's the system where you pile up logs, wood chips, IMO4 inoculant. So that's what really helps to keep down the smell, destroy the bad microbes, and turn everything into just really good soil. And it's a pig system that you don't actually have to clean out. And you can check out this video that I did over at my friend Blake's house, where he has a couple different no-smell K&F pig setups. And then right here, this is where they milk twice a day. All the little stanchions are in here for the cows. And the cows are right out here. Those are A2 jerseys, 100% grass-fed. And the brother that raises the animals, he has 15 paddocks out there. Of course, they're not using electric. And then in the middle, he has a bunch of cattle gates, and they're just all tied together, and he splits the paddocks with that. So he's able to have 30 total paddocks. So with those 30 paddocks, he can do 30 moves. And then after 30 days, he's back to that original spot. And he was giving me some good tips on moving animals, where he's discovered that, you know, you could stick that at every 30-day rotation, but if you can really mix it up, he's found that that really helps to improve the soil. And he told me that his grass production now for his cows is about 3 times as good as before he was doing all this rotation. So to get a little bit more diversity, he was telling me to switch up how much you're rotating. So maybe let some of that ground rest for 6 weeks rather than just 30 days. And to do this at different parts of the season as well. Sometimes he'll graze it when he'll let the seed heads form and drop some seed and then take them into graze. Sometimes he'll graze them when the grass is at the perfect height. And just switching that up is allowing for more diversity of plants to develop. You know, whatever's happening within the soil and the relationship with the microbes, that's being allowed to go to different stages. So by doing that, he's noticed just a big difference in the health of his pastures. So that's something that I'd like to try as well. You know, if you have more land, to throw them off on some other area, let it rest a little bit longer than you normally would, and then throw them back out. So twice a day, these Jerseys, he pulls them out of these paddocks, brings them up this path, and then walks them up this path and takes them all the way to the milking barn up there. And I have to say that I think that doing dairy's gotta be the most responsibility of any farming enterprise. You know, you're never going on vacation if you're doing dairy. You gotta be there twice a day to keep them in milk, keep them healthy. And but I'm sure he's got a really good relationship with them, moving them back and forth like this all the time. So we're gonna get a little treat. The farmer's gonna move the cows right now. And we won't get him on film, but we're gonna get the cows moving. So he actually just opened up the gate and the cows know exactly what to do. They're just walking straight over to the barn. He didn't even have to do anything. So the farmer just said, check out the udders on this cow right here, because she's real full, and it just shows how healthy they are. So what they'll do is they'll just stay in this shaded area from the afternoon. It's about 12 o'clock right now, and they'll stay here till milking time, which is at 6 p.m. So 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. they're doing all their milkings, and that they just chew the cud while they're in here and just digest what they already ate in the morning. So the farmer was saying that that's his favorite calf right there, that the proportions are really nice on it. Got something on my hand you like? Oh my gosh, wow, the tongue is so strong. In here they have, I didn't even notice this, they got papaya in here. Oh my gosh, that is cool. So yeah, that's in the ground too. Look at those papaya. That's amazing. Very cool. So then in here they've got onions curing, a bunch of white onions. These are their early cucumbers right here. And then they just got a ton more onion. They got a bunch of red onion in those stacks here, ready to go for storage. Then they've got their watermelon patch. This is their early one, the one that I just showed that was all no-till without the tarps, right? So you can see that they're doing different techniques. This one's on plastic, and this the watermelons are just starting to form now, so this will be the first ones that they're able to sell. And then back over there, those will be the second harvest. So now we're moving into their orchard area, which he said is really starting to come alive now and produce some good fruit for them. Here in Tennessee, growing fruit is pretty difficult because there's just a ton of bugs, the humidity and all the rain. If there is blight or fungal diseases in the soil, you know, that bounces it up and then it gets on the leaves. So, you know, we battle a lot of different pest and disease issues here in Tennessee. But their trees are looking really good. This first tree here, we got a peach tree, and they are pruning them all to open vase shape, of course. That's the best for stone fruit. So what that looks like, there is no central leader that goes straight out, allowing for sunlight to come inside of the canopy here. A lot more airflow, and this is just really helpful for less pests and disease. And over at my house, my stone fruit is getting attacked by the Japanese beetles right now, but if your trees are healthier, they can resist them a bit more. So I've got to do some more work on the health of my trees, and when they get older, that'll help too. He was even telling me, here's an apple tree. He was talking to another farmer that said to try doing an open vase on the apple trees, which are usually a central leader-based system, but he's had success, I guess, with less of the fungal issues like blight by doing that. So that was pretty interesting. They've got some chickens in here. They got one rooster in here with like, I don't know, 20 birds, 25 birds, something like that. And little tractors, they drag them and move them around a little bit. So they are bringing in cows in here too. I noticed all the hoof prints here. So they're bringing cows in to eat down the grass and fertilize. They've got a single strand of barbed wire. That must be for the cows to hold them in. He said he really, out here in Tennessee, he said the pears do really well that they're really easy to grow. They don't really have a lot of pest and disease, so I thought that was a really good tip. I don't know the variety name, unfortunately, but these they're a lot easier to grow than just apples or stuff. Stone fruit seem to be kind of the hardest thing to grow here. So in their orchard, this is a really cool tree. This is a pawpaw, and this is one of the only native fruit tree to North America, I believe. And the fruit is kind of a mix between kind of a mango or cherry moya, kind of custardy, sweet, tropical, kind of more of a smushy texture fruit. It's really tasty, and this is something I planted on my property as well. Still got a long way to go before I get fruit, but definitely recommend planting this.